Hey everybody, you are now tuned into the Blackout, shining a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture. Blacked out by the majority on Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 online internet radio station, with your girl, Tequila. Today's special guest is author, attorney, and motivational speaker, Dr. Courtlan J. Wickliff, Esquire. How are you doing this afternoon?
Doing pretty good. About yourself?
Wonderful. Let's move that mic closer to you so they can hear you. Don't be shy now. So thank you so much for coming to our show. We know that you have a book tour that's about to begin. And before we get straight into that, I want to be able to learn more about you and introduce you to our audience. So just introduce yourself and tell us who Dr. Courtlan J. Wickliff, Esquire is.
So, first and foremost, I'm Courtlan to begin with. I say that because for me, I'm just a country boy who happened to be born in a city. And Texas born and bred. And all that is in me is just because my community deposited it in me. So for me, when asked who I am, I'm a product of a whole bunch of supportive people. Shout out to Liberty, Texas, Houston, Texas, Austin, Texas, people there who have really deposited it in me. And so I'm an amalgamation of all of their hard work, belief, and effort.
Absolutely.
And just somebody who had some dreams and steadily pursuing them.
Absolutely, and you're doing some amazing things. So we know that you definitely have a great foundation. One thing that you just mentioned was that you spent a lot of time with your dad, so it really showed you how to be an entrepreneur and see things from a business perspective, which is so important. So just to get straight into it, you've achieved so much academically and professionally. You have been ranked as the youngest engineer in the nation from Rice University.
I was.
Oh, you was. It's okay. You still held that title. That's a wonderful thing. And then you were also held the title for the youngest African American graduate from Harvard Law. What actually inspired you to want to pursue law and the engineering industry?
So for me, I am a tech nerd at heart. So I've always loved engineering, but I recognize, especially in undergrad, that I would never be the person who was creating these cures. I do not like being in a laboratory as much, but something that I recognized was I have a niche. Most engineers that you meet, not hating on my people, but they're not good communicators, and they don't really know how to talk to people who are non-technical about technical matters. And so I am a firm believer, whatever you want your hustle to be, whatever industry you want to be in, entertainment, oil and gas, whatever, you should always find a niche that other people don't have that you do. And so for me, that niche was I could look at a contract and a schematic and explain them to people who didn't have those expertise. And so I knew a lot of engineers who had business degrees. I didn't know very many with law degrees. And so for me, that's something that sparked in me. I need to go that law school route. But ultimately, being a lawyer has made me a better engineer and vice versa.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that we noticed today is that STEM is such a big topic of discussion for everybody, especially for African Americans and people of color in general, to fill those spaces. Why do you feel like STEM is so important, especially moving forward with, just the changes of technology today?
The reason why it's so important is because that is where a lot of the emerging jobs are coming. The jobs that when I have kids one day that they will have are things that I cannot conceptualize. Technology is moving at such a rapid pace. And so for the people who are not going to be replaced by automation or assembly lines, for the people who are going to have that job security, a lot of them, it's going to come in STEM. And so we want for our community for people to have those jobs. A lot of the issues that we see, crime, poverty, health, all of that can be helped if you have gainful employment.
Yeah.
And so I definitely am always encouraging people to look at STEM because of the career opportunities, but then whatever your passion is, understand that it's going to intersect with STEM. So if you are in music, wiring up the soundboard, that's electrical engineering. If you are somebody who's into music, or if you're somebody who's into art, right now there's some really exciting things going on at Texas A&M where some of the technical students are using what they're called fractals to make beautiful works of art. There are a whole lot of different things that you can do that intersect with STEM. And so just because you might not be passionate about specifically, oh, I love math or I love science, and I tell people there's some math and science that I absolutely can't stand. if you find your niche and how you can use that stuff to intersect with your passion, you're going to find it a lot easier to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how important is it for men of color to occupy those spaces in law and engineering?
So they're important for two different reasons. With engineering, as I said, job security, being able to be a fixture in your community. A lot of times people look at kids who are in the inner city or people who are in rural areas who are doing, unsavory things to make a living. They look at them as set apart, but honestly, everybody that I've known who they've gone down that pathway, they're emulating the version of success that they see.
Exactly.
And if all you see as a successful person, the person who always pays their bills, who gets to drive around nice cars, who gets to have nice things, is the people who are doing criminal activity or people who are getting it in unscrupulous ways, you're going to emulate that behavior because every kid I have ever met wants to be successful.
Yeah.
And so it's important for black men to occupy those spaces to show black boys that they can do that too. And don't just be somebody who once you get to that position, you've always been pristine, there's nothing that's ever gone wrong in your life, and that's what you convey to people, because it's never true. We all have our circumstances. Mm-hmm. Be comfortable accessing that test and that pain so you can have a testimony. In law, yes, law is a good career, but I think it's additionally important for more black men to be in law because that's where laws are being set. So if you look at the mass incarceration, that started with laws that are passed by Congress, and that's implemented by judges, and that's implemented by prosecuting attorneys. We need more people who can be sympathetic and empathetic to our community in those positions. Mm-hmm. And it's something that it might take time, and I'm so proud of the judges, the black female judges in Harris County who did a really great job. I actually had the privilege of working for one of them. Shout out to Judge Chambers Gray. And you need more people who can look at you across the courtroom and recognize that sometimes the only difference between you and them is a couple bad circumstances, and give you that mercy and that understanding. And we can only get that when we get more people in those positions. And with that being said, for those who are considering law school, I also encourage you to consider being prosecuting attorneys. I know that a lot of times we view those as the enemy, but those are the people who get to set what you're charged with. Yeah. So the way that the law is set up is that one thing that you do wrong can actually be multiple crimes, and the minimum and maximum sentencing for those crimes are drastically different. And so if you have somebody who's empathetic enough to, instead of always seeking the maximum crime and to charge you with the most severe thing, to charge you with something lesser, that makes a profound impact on somebody's life. And so also be open to those types of positions as well.
Now, that's an amazing thing, because you're absolutely right. Representation is so important, especially when you come from a community that you identify with. You're probably going to be more, like you said, sympathetic to the things that go on in that environment. But what can you say to the people that may feel like, well, we are voting for African-American judges to withhold those positions, or we are encouraging young black men and women to go out into the police force in situations like, for example, Amber Geiger happens, right? And they see the black judge be sympathetic towards the person that, committed the crime that may not represent the community that we live in, versus helping the victim that looks like us. How would you tell them, okay, wait, we still do have to, pursue those positions, even though there may be people who don't have our best interests that look like us?
So you try and get me in trouble.
I'm not.
The thing I will say is that there's always going to be those questionable people in a position. The problem is that we're not flooding those positions with people. Mm-hmm. So the type of person who can be the first to get elected into some of these counties that are not predominantly black and some of these less diverse areas, they might not be the type of people who come from the same background as the people that they're overseeing. And so we don't just need for the best of the best, quote unquote, the people who have always gone to the private schools, or the people who have been disconnected for the community for a while, to be in those positions. We need to make sure that we're encouraging all of our community to pursue those things, whether it's in the judiciary or it's other elected offices. And the other thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that when people go out and pursue those, we still embrace them as part of the community. Sometimes what happens, and I've had family members go and join the police force, and then all of a sudden the rest of the family starts looking at them a little different. Well, if you start alienating them, then you're not having a member of your community be on the police force. You're having a former member of your community be on the police force, which isn't useful to the community. And so making sure that we embrace those people, but recognizing that every group of people on the planet has some people they're embarrassed of, or some people who do some embarrassing things. We just gotta shake it off and keep it moving.
Absolutely. Now, with you occupying your spaces, doing so many positive things as an attorney and an author and motivational speaker, I'm sure that you may have had some challenges throughout your success that allowed you to grow and develop as well. So what did you possibly face while trying to pursue, getting a law degree and becoming a lawyer and, being in engineering? What all did you face?
Oh my goodness. Well, first and foremost, something that I always like to tell people is that unfortunately, the first thing people are going to see when you walk in the room is your black skin. And it's something that, of course, definitely proud of who I am. But when I say that, I'm meaning that when I was 18 years old, I'm about to graduate from the number 12 ranked bioengineering program in the country. I have a pretty solid GPA. I founded clubs. I am active in the community. My list of extracurriculars can fill up half a page. And I still walk into my pre-law advisor's office and he tells me I'm aiming too high. And that I need to set my sights lower if I want to be successful getting into and graduating from law school. And so that challenge has persisted from all the way as early as the third grade, when they refused to believe my A transcript was correct, and so they kept retesting me over the summer before they would allow me to be admitted into the third grade, all the way to getting my PhD and having a professor try to hold up my research. You will constantly encounter those challenges by virtue of who you are. And even if you're not black, there will be things that people look at you, they only see where you come from, or they only see one aspect of you, and they don't want to allow you, or allow themselves to believe that you can be successful in the things you pursue. And so overcoming that challenge requires you to have some constant self-affirmation and constantly believe in yourself, because you're going to routinely have people tell you what you can't do. And I always set it up when I'm telling that with the story of being at Rice University, because it showed you that I, at that point, had done a lot in my life for somebody so young to still be told that I'm not good enough. And so one of the big messages that I make sure that I tell people when I'm out speaking is understand you are good enough, you are talented enough, beautiful enough, smart enough, whatever you need to be enough to achieve what you want in life, as long as you're willing to dedicate yourself to it.
Absolutely. That was actually well said. I really appreciate that. I have some more things that I want to talk about in regards to your book tour within the next segment. We got to go to a quick commercial break, so hold on there.
All right.
But we want you guys to make sure you return with us. So we're going to continue our show in a few. Until then, you guys are listening to The Blackout, always shining a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture on Afro Vibes Radio with your girl, Tequila. Hey everybody, you are now tuned back into The Blackout, shining a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture. Blacked out by the majority on Afro Vibes Radio, the #1 online internet radio station with your girl, Tequila. We are currently still in the studio with the lovely Mr. Dr.Courtlan, J. Wickliff Esquire. That is such an amazing name. I feel a little bouginess going on. No, I love it. We've talked about so much over the break. I wish you guys could have got into this conversation, but we're going to hop right back into it. So you currently have a speaking tour coming up in Texas. You'll be touring over 20 cities to motivate students to excel academically and in post-secondary education as well. Why are you so passionate about advocating for education and just getting these students on the right path?
So regardless of what you want to do in life, you need education. And I use the word education because I recognize that there are a lot of careers that you can excel at and make a good living at that don't involve college. And so, plumber, electrician, construction, different things like that. Regardless of what your dream is and what your passions are, you should be able to find and get involved in the education that gets you there. And a lot of times, we have young people who are discouraged from pursuing those educational opportunities because they're being told that they're not good enough to excel in them. And so I just wanted to go around to all of my fellow Texans to be able to, being Texas born and bred, tell them that I'm coming from the same place you are. Here are some of the issues and difficulties I've dealt with, getting bullied basically my whole childhood, losing my dad at 10 years old. Then my dad passed away a month after my mom quit her job to go back to school. So we went from a two-parent household essentially to two-income household to a no-income household basically overnight. And so, my mom is having to raise me and support my two brothers on my dad's Social Security and an assistantship salary. Needless to say, that compounded the bullying and things of that nature. And so being able to revisit some of those painful memories and share them with students to let them know, despite all of this, by continuously pursuing my goals and pursuing my dreams, I was able to get beyond it and get to success and encourage them to find what they want their success to look like and pursue it.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that about like being transparent, because that's one of the things that I do. I was just recently crowned the 2019 Miss Black Harris County under the Miss Black Houston pageant. Thank you. And so I go out and I talk to girl empowerment programs, because just like the young boys, the girls, because of their environment, they feel like, hey, I don't see anybody that looks like me that are accomplishing these goals, and they tend to give up. And so I have to explain to them, like, yeah, I may have all these nice things, I may be accomplishing stuff, but there were a lot of challenges along the way. There was a lot of bullying going on amongst so many other things. And if you see the shirt that I have on, Squeeze Me Healthy, it's a nonprofit that me and my mom are running together because she had breast cancer. And so at that time, just like you, my mom, she ended up getting breast cancer. They said she wasn't going to make it. My stepfather got incarcerated, and my real father didn't want to be in my life. So I didn't have any parents at that point. My grandmother had to step in and be that parent for me. And that's enough to make you feel like, you know what? Everything's against me at this point. Why do I need to keep going? But I think when we show them that in spite of that we still had goals that we wanted to achieve, it really makes other people feel like they can do it, even though it's something so small. They got to hear that bad side just like they can see the good side. Absolutely.
Definitely. And I definitely want to encourage all of the young professionals out there to do the same. When I think about the purpose of this tour and why I put it together, I basically started with realizing that a lot of kids were self-sabotaging when it came to submitting those college applications or submitting those applications for whatever that next level looked like. And so I timed it so that I'm going to be talking to them right before a lot of that is due, giving them enough time to get their confidence back, press the submit button. And that was something that was deeply personal and something I was passionate about because people might think that I knew all of this stuff when I was applying to college, but honestly, I, looking back, was very ignorant on the entire college process. I ended up at Rice. I did not know how good of a school Rice was. I literally just looked at the top bioengineering programs in the state, and that was the top one. And so I applied to it, and I applied to the number 2 and the number 3. I didn't know anything about some of the scholarships and how to get them, and there's a whole lot of things that even for this tour, I met with the Office of Admissions at my university so I could learn more, so I could better be able to answer questions. And so that's something deeply personally passionate to me, but I'm a fan of hip-hop, and a while back Kendrick Lamar dropped Control, and that put all of his peers on notice that, okay, you see what I'm bringing to the table and how I'm passionate about my art. I want to see your passion and what you bring to the table. And so part of the reason why I'm wanting to do this big, I'm wanting to put this out there, is because and I'm driving basically 4,500 plus miles on this whole tour. I'm going to 20 plus cities. I'm going to be talking, I think, at 45 or 50 plus places, all in the span of a month. And I have a GoFundMe.
You better get it.
I have a GoFundMe online, but if I don't collect any money, whatever I don't collect and need to spend on this is coming out of my pocket. So I might be paying down some credit cards for the next 10 years, but this is me throwing down that gauntlet to say, okay, here's what my passion is, and here's what I bring to the table and what I'm willing to do for my community. And I want to see what my peers are willing to do and how they're willing to step up.
Absolutely. And that's to be commended. Absolutely. And that's why we have you here, because just to have the type of excellence in the community being Black, people don't typically get to see that. And one thing that I always talk about is you got to have the passion for it. Anybody can do anything, but if you don't have the passion, it's going to die off. And I think that's why you're so great at what you do and you're reaching so many people, because you care. You want to see people, not that just look like you, people in general, children just succeed. And like you said, everything is in the hands of millennials and the younger generation. And if nobody else is going to reach out to them, somebody has to give them the way. And so tell us a little bit about some of the subjects that you're going to discuss with the students in regards to academic success and career development.
So first and foremost, going to be giving them tips for academic success. One of the big ones that I'm going to be covering is time management. To all of the listeners out there, one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest reasons why I've seen people not succeed both academically and in their professional career and entrepreneurship is because they don't prioritize and properly manage their time. So going to be going over some of those tips, going to be going over general tips for college admissions, but then also talking very specifically about some of the traumas and things that I've experienced and how I overcame them. Something that we oftentimes don't think about is that regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, regardless of where you live in this country and where you live in the world, most times you're saying how messed up the world is and how bad the trajectory is. Whether you or the other side believes that you're right or wrong, whatever, but understand, all kids are hearing these messages. So if you hear all the adults saying how horrible the world is and how much worse we're making it for kids, you can't be surprised when those kids are afraid about stepping out there and trying to pursue something. And so the biggest thing I want to be talking about is giving them encouragement that, yes, there might be some things that are not perfect and there might be some things that are going to be more difficult for you. And don't dismiss the fact that it is, in a lot of respects, more difficult for some of these students because of some of the changes that have been done with the academic system and some of the ways in which we're lagging behind other countries. Regardless of those things, you can still be successful in giving them that encouragement, and then also being a listening ear, giving them a chance to talk back to me, ask me questions. I'm an open book, so I like to give them the opportunity to talk about what they're concerned about.
Absolutely. So to hop straight into the books that you're actually going to be touring about, or the book that you are touring about, you have two that you told me. The first, Young and Driven, which is the first portion of the book that you created, and then the second, most recently, is Young and Driven Overdrive. So tell us about the basis of these books and how it allows millennials to expound upon the tips that you give.
Yes. So when I was coming out of my PhD program, we had talked about it on the break, but me getting my PhD was a goal I have been pursuing for 20 years, about 18. When I was in the third grade, I did a report on Dr. King, and he got his PhD when he was 26, and I wanted to get mine at that age or younger. And so I spent the next 18 to 20 years working towards that goal and managed to achieve it. I got my PhD at 25.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But then there was a moment after I finished my PhD where I'm like, oh crap, I have been pursuing the same thing for 20 years. Now what am I going to pursue? And so initially, the book started as me just getting out what my process was for achieving this goal to begin with, and then starting to try to think about what that next goal will be. And it just kept getting longer and longer until it turned into essentially my guide for how I accomplished that dream. And so I published the first book, and I had been going around speaking all over the country, and I kept getting some consistent questions, and I realized that as good as I felt like the book was, it wasn't complete. So I took what were a lot of those frequently asked questions, especially by young professionals and professionals, around relationship building, on how to bounce back from tragedy. One thing that ended up happening was, unfortunately, while I was in law school, both of my grandfathers died. My great aunt, who was like another grandmother to me, she passed away, and then the first lawyer in our family all passed away within a 2-year period. And I didn't get to go to my great aunt's funeral because some tornadoes hit Oklahoma right before her funeral was supposed to start, so I couldn't fly in. But in all the other funerals, I was a pallbearer, and in my grandfather's funerals, I wrote the obituary. And in all those cases, I had to immediately get back on a plane and get back to work. With my first grandfather who passed away, I had to get back and start my second year of law school. My second grandfather, I had to get back, take tests and finals. My great aunt, my great uncle, I had to get back and study for the bar exam. And I didn't realize that the process that I was doing, even though it was something that had been trained in me, that regardless of how you feel work needs to get done, that's something that people struggle with. A lot of times, one of those events could derail you. And it's not that I'm so impressive. It's just literally I work a process of I need to give myself time to grieve, but then I need to do my little system for getting back to work. And so different things like that where I realized I had left that out of the first edition of the book, so I needed to write a second one.
Absolutely. That's very inspiring, though. I'm glad that you mentioned that because, like I said, we all come across so many challenges that people, they immediately think, oh, I'm getting hit hard with this, so I need to give up. But you can't. Sometimes those things are going to force you to keep going. Well, I'm just so glad that you shared that with us. Before you get out of here, because we're coming to the end of our show, and I know I've kept you longer than I should have. I do apologize.
No problem.
Is there any advice that you could give young men or women of color out there that want to pursue the law and engineering industry or just become an author and share their story?
So, actually, the advice with all of them are going to be the same. Just start working. A lot of times we get stuck in what I call analysis paralysis, where we keep trying to create this perfect plan for how we're going to get to our goal. And at the end of the day, we'll fixate so much on planning that we never start. Anything you want to pursue, just start working. The other thing I'll say is find people who have been where you're trying to go and who can give you some personal advice or be a sounding board for you to bounce ideas off. Even if they aren't are on the exact same pathway you want to be on, there are always people who have done some aspect of what you're trying to pursue that can give you advice. And to that end, I'm also a resource, so feel free to reach out to me. Very easy to find if you spell my name correctly, Courtlan. I found out I was Googleable, so I'm very happy about that.
Okay, Google me, baby.
Yeah, and then also, on social media, CJWICKLIFF, CJ Wickliff. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available, and I try to be as responsive as I possibly can because at the end of the day, a lot of people deposited things in me, and I want to make sure I deposit things in other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last thing, tell them where they can purchase your books and also where they can find out information for tickets or for your tour for your tickets.
Yeah. So the book available on Amazon.com, also available on younganddriven.com. With the tour, so I'm gonna be in high school, so that aspect of the tour people can get tickets to, but I'm also going to be doing events separate from the educational tour where I'm actually going to be doing book signings and things like that, the first of which is coming up on November 2nd at Avondale in Houston, so it's at 1 p.m. Feel free to come out and see me, and I'm going to be posting on social media the flyers, so definitely follow me, CJ Wickliff, and at the end of the day, anytime that you want more information, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'm pretty responsive.
Well, thank you so much for coming on my show today and just sharing your excellence with the community, and we definitely honor you for all that you do.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for all tuning into The Blackout, where we always shine a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture with your girl Tequila on Afro Vibes Radio. Make sure to check out our Facebook and Instagram pages at The Blackout AVR. And to stay up to date on our previous discussions and future events, please visit Afro Vibes Facebook and Instagram at Afro Vibes Radio, Twitter at Afro Vibes Radio with an S, and lastly, listen to us online at www.afrovibesradio.com or simply download the Afro Vibes Radio app on the Apple or Google Play Store.